6 o'clock, hello from the Yorkshire Television News Centre. On the second day of the inquest into the Selby Bridge tragedy, the mechanic who serviced the runaway lorry which killed 6 people said today that as far as he was concerned, the brake drums were not worn. Julian Preston said he could not accept earlier evidence that all 8 brakes on the lorry which crashed into a row of shops at Bolton Brow were faulty. But the transport firm's insurers have accepted liability for the crash. Families waiting to hear the verdict will now have to wait until Monday before the coroner reaches a decision. Emily Baker has been in court.
Relatives and witnesses arriving at Bradford Magistrates Court this morning were hoping to hear a verdict today. Most of the evidence is centred around the maintenance procedures at Fewston Transport, the Skipton-based company which owned the lorry that crashed at Bolton Brow. Witnesses included former transport manager for the company, Alex Johnstone, and the mechanic Julian Preston, who last serviced the wagon 2 months before the accident. Mr. Preston disputed yesterday's evidence that the brake drums would have shown excessive wear even then. Mr. Johnston said he'd encountered numerous difficulties at the firm and claimed a block on the amount of spending on spares and repairs were imposed from time to time. He claimed amounts were fixed and sometimes vehicles waiting for repairs were made to last another week or another fortnight. Alex Johnston's evidence was strongly disputed by the counsel for the company, Mr. Stephen Kirkbright, who revealed that Mr. Johnston had been dismissed from the company for misconduct. He accused Mr. Johnston of being motivated by vindictiveness. Inspector Gary Walsh told the court that after the verdict was recorded, criminal proceedings may follow. The 2 company directors who gave evidence this afternoon were unable to say much in court.
I can't make any comments in detail about the inquest because, as you know, the coroner has adjourned his decision and he'd give a reserved decision on Monday.
Meanwhile, the company's motor insurers, Norwich Union, have already admitted liability.
The insurers, who I act for, have acted in the most proper and correct manner. They knew that the effect on the community of Selby Bridge was great, and with that in mind, they've acted very quickly to deal and consider all claims.
Before adjourning the inquest, the coroner, Mark Hinchliffe, said he'd be considering a number of verdicts: accidental death or death by misadventure, unlawful killing, or possibly an open verdict. He said, "I do appreciate and understand how much people need to get on with the rest of their lives. But I'm sure they understand that the inquest has thrown up a good deal of evidence. I believe I owe it to the relatives, the community of Selby Bridge, and indeed the whole of West Yorkshire to weigh the evidence most carefully before coming to a conclusion." The inquest resumes on Monday.
That report from Emily Baker. Well, the Court of Appeal has ordered a retrial in the case of the biker John Megson, who was jailed for life 4 years ago for murdering another motorcycle enthusiast at a lakeside campsite. John Megson of Sheffield was a member of the Rotherham-based bikers club, the Druids, when he was convicted of the murder of 19-year-old Stephen Rowley. But this afternoon, appeal judges quashed his conviction as unsafe and unsatisfactory, as Christine Talbot now reports.
Stephen Rowley was stabbed to death on the shore of the Mere campsite at Scarborough 5 years ago following a fight between 2 biker gangs. John Megson refused to give evidence in his own defence because of a Druid code of silence about the case. He was convicted mainly on scientific evidence because some of the victim's bloodstains were found on his clothes. But at the High Court today, former Druid Stella Harris decided to speak out, telling judges that although Megson had initially been involved in the fracas, he'd already fallen down in a drunken stupor when Stephen Rowley was struck by another member. That man was later seen wiping his knife on the ground to get rid of blood traces. Ms. Harris said she'd been frightened of speaking because of possible repercussions from the rest of the gang. But today, Lord Justice Glidewell said if her evidence had been available at the time of the trial, the jury may well have believed her.
It's a fantastic result. It's what we wanted. I can't think of any better result. It's exactly what we wanted. We now got the retrial, and I think it's safe to say that we've broken the code of silence.
Obviously, the code of silence didn't work. He, like I've said before, he stuck to his part, you know, keeping silent because he shouldn't have any other members in. But having said that, the guilty party was supposed to come forward and hold his hand up, but he didn't.
They hope John Megson will finally be able to clear his name in court. The trial will take place in Leeds at the earliest opportunity.
Christine Talbot reporting, and it's time now to look at the rest of the day's menus from your part of the calendar region.
Thanks, John. A teenage student raped on Woodhouse Moor in Leeds told a court today how she thought she'd be killed at the hands of her attacker. She said that during her ordeal she even pictured her own funeral.
Detectives who led the 18-month inquiry arriving for day 2 of the trial at Leeds Crown Court today. David Jackson, who's 28 and from Osmondthorpe in Leeds, is said to have attacked 5 women students on Woodhouse Moor, a park close to the city centre. All the victims have finished giving evidence, the 5th today showing the jury on a map the spot at which she claimed she was pulled to the ground, then raped by a hooded attacker. The girl, who was 19 at the time, told how walking home on Woodhouse Lane she was jumped on and pulled to the ground as she took a shortcut by a car park. She was dragged back into nearby bushes, then assaulted several times. The girl told prosecutor Paul Worsley QC that she didn't struggle as she thought she'd be killed. She even pictured her mother and father at her funeral. Earlier, the court heard a university student who was also attacked had to take a year off from her studies to try and come to terms with her ordeal. Jackson denies 10 charges, including 1 of rape and 3 of indecent assault. The trial's set to continue next week.
Detectives in Leeds are hunting a gang of masked men who raided a jewellery retail warehouse. The incident was an exact replica of another raid at the same store 3 weeks ago. The raid took place around 20 to 8 last night at the Markdown store on Mabgate during late-night opening. 3 men wearing balaclavas smashed through a door with baseball bats and grabbed jewellery worth £100,000. The robbers made off in a stolen blue Vauxhall Cavalier, which was later found abandoned half a mile away behind the Trotters pub on the Ebor Valley estate. Police say the raid was virtually identical to another at the shop on February the 3rd.
The previous incident was 3 weeks ago. Again, that was on a Thursday evening at a similar time, and they carried out the offence in a similar manner. And again, the vehicle which they used on that occasion was found on the Ebor Garden estate.
Police want any witnesses to contact them immediately. Well, the weather is biting into the weekend football programme with 2 games off already, but some clubs have refused to give in to the snow.
Huddersfield Town were among a number of clubs who appealed to fans to help clear many inches of snow from the pitch. Their supporters responded in numbers. Like other teams, they're now hoping their efforts aren't foiled by more overnight snow. At Bramall Lane at 10, Sheffield United became the first league club in the country to call off a match. They should have met Queen's Park Rangers tomorrow. Barnsley have since followed suit, and morning inspections are planned for the games featuring Grimsby, Bradford, Scarborough, Chesterfield, Mansfield, Doncaster and Scunthorpe, whose match at Hereford is in serious doubt.
The new Minister for Bradford and Leeds, David Curry, has spent the day assessing the progress of the region's 2 city challenge areas. Batley and Bradford are both in line for big grants from the government and Europe.
The rundown textile town of Batley has an unemployment rate of around 20%. In winning £37 million worth of investment from the government's City Challenge programme, Batley proposed to turn its rags into riches. A year later, and 140 projects are underway. The fruits of one such project were opened by the Minister today.
Batley, of course, has got a long industrial tradition, but like many towns in what was the old West Riding, we are now trying to develop new industries, build small industries, and give them some sustained way of developing. And of course, we need information. We need to get it in one place.
And it's anticipated that this new place will be used by more than 700 small businesses a year.
Yorkshire Water staff have been demonstrating today against proposed changes in their working conditions. The privatised water company is planning on putting some of its work out to tender, but staff feel it would mean a loss of pay and pension rights.
More than 50 Unison members braved the elements this afternoon to deliver an angry message to Yorkshire Water. Up to half of Yorkshire Water's staff could be transferred to outside contractors over the next few years. The union feels workers will have no pension scheme, no sick pay arrangements, and they'll be forced to work longer hours for less money. They feel a company making record profits could do more for its workers.
We're not throwing our people to the wolves in this case. This is about preserving jobs. We could simply pay our people off and put them on the dole. We don't want to do that. We want to make sure they have jobs to go to and a decent compensation package for any loss that incurs.
That is not quite so. They want to offer us a compensation deal that isn't up to scratch, that don't cover for the losses that we're going to suffer, and they're just throwing us at wolves.
The union says it'll be staging many more demonstrations like this to get its point across.
Kristen Hadland reporting there. Traders and business owners in Doncaster are being asked to help to pay for a high-technology security camera system aimed at making the town centre one of the safest in Britain.
60 security cameras will create a direct link between police control and the streets of Doncaster town centre. £1 million is being spent on highly sophisticated equipment to produce top-quality images even at night. Cases like the Jamie Bulger murder have highlighted the importance of video evidence of crime.
I would like to see it be a deterrent to criminals, that they look at Doncaster as a place not to go because the chances of being detected and arrested are enhanced by virtue of the system. But I also think that it will provide a safer environment for people coming into the Doncaster area.
Shops and businesses are being asked to help pay for the project, prompted after a series of violent armed robberies. Doncaster Council, partners in the scheme, say cutting down on crime is a top priority.
So the good honest people say, we don't care who's looking or anything like that. If you don't prevent crime, do it by all means. So we feel that it would encourage people to come to Doncaster.
It's hoped crime rates will be cut by half when the cameras go into operation.
That's it from the news desk. We're back after the 10 o'clock news. Now back to John Shies in the news centre.
Right, despite more snow again this afternoon, racing at Southall in North Nottinghamshire, home to one of the country's 2 all-weather tracks, went ahead as usual. But ironically, all the remaining hurdle fixtures this season at Southall and at the other all-weather track at Linfield in Surrey have been cancelled following the death of another horse yesterday. The racing authorities say the decision had to be made in the interests of safety for all concerned. Coming up, the moment that prompted the racing authorities to act, Warbeat, 6 lengths clear coming to the last hurdle in yesterday's first race on the all-weather track at Lingfield, falls badly. According to official figures, Warbeat was the 12th all-weather hurdle fatality in 2 months this year, compared to just 6 in the whole of last year. At Southall today, they were racing on the flat, not over the controversial French-style hurdles, much stiffer and less forgiving than traditional obstacles, and held by many to be responsible for the spate of fatalities. Among the critics, the North Yorkshire trainer of Cheltenham Gold Cup winner Jadami. He won't send his horses to jump on all-weather tracks anymore.
They're like little solid fences, and if fences are bigger, horses will stand off and jump at them. But the smaller ones will tend to dive at them. And with them being solid, they just turn over.
Views shared by those at the sharp end.
The hurdles they're using at the moment are too severe for the surface. The other hurdles that used to fall down when horses were tired, they got away with a mistake. With these new plastic ones, they don't get away with mistakes.
But back at Southall, where 6 of the 12 fatalities have occurred so far this year, some believe alarmist newspaper headlines have stampeded the racing authorities into action.
The standard of horse is probably pretty low, and they need to be very fit. Probably quite a few of the horses aren't fit enough, and they probably go too quick for their own good.
Our personal view is it's the standard of the horse that races. We believe that a lot of the horses are not fit and are not capable of racing, and that's what's caused the problem.
Today it's become apparent that yesterday Warbeat died not as a result of his fall, but from a hemorrhage suffered moments before. Even so, the management at Southall support the cancellation decision. They're as anxious as anyone else to get to the bottom of the problem. And they'll be taking part in an inquiry to be held by the Jockey Club, which regulates British racing. That'll focus on the surface, the quality of the horses that have died, and on the fences themselves, before deciding whether to scrap all-weather hurdles meetings for good.
Now, we'll obviously keep you up to date on developments with that story, and a decision will be expected from the Jockey Club next month. Well, still to come on Calendar, the moment we've all been waiting for, we unveil Calendar's Poet Laureate. Our judge has finally picked a winner from thousands of entries. We find out exactly who it is in part 2.
Me, I could write a book